Welcome to the Retro Rejects, a podcast about heavy metal and horror movies, I suppose. This week's show, we're going to be talking about Glen Danzig and why you should be listening to him. Yeah, I suppose I said that kind of wrong, but why you should be listening to Glen Danzig is if he was kind of like some prophet. Yeah.
Well, maybe he is. I don't know. Some of his stuff is very prophetic, isn't it?
Like what?
I don't know.
Juju bone?
What? I don't know. Yes, go on. Anyway.
But I suppose we're taking a stance on this podcast. We're kind of really saying that I think he is underappreciated a lot. People should be listening to him a lot more. The guy is like 68, I think, at the moment. He's pushing into his 70s. He's had a fantastic career.
You should probably double check that in case you're really aging the man up.
I think
He'd be like, hey, I'm only 40.
Yeah, no, he's 68. But I do think he's massively underappreciated.
Yeah.
Even I was surprised. I was looking back on some videos about him, and it was Razor Fist had a rundown of his career up to a certain point, but there was what you kind of forget was that the first Danzig album, even though it was critically acclaimed, didn't particularly do well. The second one didn't do great either, Lucifuge. And it was only after they did the live album with Mother on it, Demon Troll, I can't remember what it's called, but that was all over MTV. Then people kind of went back to Danzig and started getting into him, and then Danzig became big. And it was only for a really brief time, I suppose, that he was big.
Yeah, sort of household name almost big.
Yeah, but kind of, I don't know, in my mind, or looking back for me, it seemed to be massive the whole time. Like, all the thinking, I suppose I only really got into Danzig on the back of Mother as well.
Yeah.
From the live show. Like, I didn't hear it was only through MTV. For some reason, Danzig stuff was really hard to get in Ireland. Even after he got big, I always struggled to get anything. I think I might have had a copy of Danzig 3, and I think I had Danzig 4, but they were like, they had to order them in.
Ah, bloody hell.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose Anthem's sort of out of the way at all in Ireland. Is very hard to get. Was very hard to get.
At that stage, yeah.
Yeah, you had to order it in through like actual record stores and stuff.
Yeah, and like Sam Hain, which the correct pronunciation, because Sam Hain is what the Americans call it, or what its sound is an Irish word for
it's a festival,
Halloween.
basically. Yeah.
But like, it was only up until recently I got to hear that like, you couldn't get any Sam Hain stuff over here. Like,
it's only really with the advent of the internet and sort of online sales and stuff like that.
They weren't available to stream for a long time as well. It's only fairly recently they're available to stream. Misfits, of course, but as well the Misfits, like when we were young, you couldn't get the Misfits. You could get the newer stuff, but you couldn't get the older stuff. I think there was bootleg versions of it. So, and as well, then I probably only got into the Misfits through Metallica.
Okay.
With their garage
covers,
with it, but I suppose how did you? Because you weren't into Danzig when you were young either, were you?
No, I wouldn't have been really, and it kind of, he would have sounded, I suppose, a bit like a more metal sort of Roy Orbison or something like that. I suppose it would have been you sort of introduced me to a lot of Danzig's, and I was like starting to listen to it then when you were like, oh, this is a good album or this is a good track, and I was like, actually, he's not wrong for a change. So that's why I started listening to Danzig. And of course then, like yourself, he started popping up with a lot of other bands, a lot of other musicians kind of are always name checking him or referencing him or holding him up in high esteem. So I was like, right, okay, this guy, I do need to check him out a little bit,
Yeah, well, his stuff is amazing, and like, for people who haven't actually listened to any Danzig albums, or even if you just know, like, people probably know Mother and a few other song, but if you actually listen to the whole album, like, there's elements there, I suppose. He always reminded me of Jim Morrison. I remember when the first people used to compare him to Elvis. They were like, "Oh, the heavy metal Elvis or evil Elvis." In the late 80s and the 90s was the thing, and like what you said, Roy Orbison. Like he did a song with Roy Orbison. But he definitely has that. He was always compared to those kind of, especially at that stage, because of his singing. Like with metal, people didn't really sing like that at that stage. There wasn't any. It was people were either seen as being screaming, which they weren't really, or like you have people like, even though I hate Maiden, like you can't deny that Bruce Dickinson
type stuff.
Like there's some fantastic there, King Diamond. There are loads of great singers in metal, but I don't think
he went the other way. He went for the lower registers. He was like a deep singer, which you don't get the baritone type thing.
But he's like Danzig, even like a lot of, I don't know, for years you'll have people that even that are into metal, they'll be like, "Oh, it's your Danzig," would but they kind of focus on that bit, and it's like he's fucking fantastic singer, fantastic vocalist. Like he's done some really, really cool ballads. And then I suppose one of the criticisms that goes at him in some of the later albums, his voice is gone. But it's like, come on, like after fucking 20 or 30 years by that stage when he was of touring and screaming every night, and singing
and he
every
would have
night.
tailored the songs to that voice register anyway, and people, voices change as you get older. Just appreciate the slightly different sounds. It would be my kind of opinion on that.
But that's, but there was that thing where it's like, and I think as well that, like, really, when you look at his career overall, the Misfits were massive. They had a falling out, and he went off and he set up Sam Hain. Then the Misfits kind of came back. There was always legal disputes. Now, according to him, I've seen interviews with him and Jerry Only, and they were saying that they never actually really fell out. It wasn't a personal, it was just a business thing. And Doyle stayed friends with all, and they're doing a couple of reunion gigs every now and again.
Yeah.
But I think the way Danzig comes across to me is he's probably someone who's very creative. I think a lot of creative people that are have trouble sticking with just one kind of thing for a long time.
Project to project.
So he went from the Misfits to Sam Hain and then to Danzig. And even with Danzig, I suppose what a lot of people would call the first four albums were kind of considered the classic run of Danzig. They're like blues metal, doom blues metal. But there's some elements, I always thought, of industrial kind of thing,
Well, of course, later on.
or kind of goth, but not like goth. There's you can hear Bauhaus in some of the stuff. They're amazing albums. And then, you had the industrial
phase of
or a couple of albums of that.
Every musician, if they're around the 90s, seem to go through either a new metal or an industrial phase. Yeah.
But the guy, you can't blame the guy for it. What's he? If he went on and made it, the fifth album was, I suppose, what a lot of people see as a step into industrial, Black Acid, Devil, from what I can remember it was called. And they were always trying to rip off Trent Reznor. Now, the thing is, the guy did 4 amazing albums. So, over that period, fucking probably, maybe close to 10 years, say, covering those between touring them and stuff, you're going to get sick of doing it. So then you're going to be like, hey, I like this kind of music. Maybe I want to.
Yeah, that's the thing. He could be listening to it himself and just taking inspiration.
Yeah,
just I'm going that way.
Yeah. And
he did a very good. I thought he made a fairly decent fist at industrial music. It's just it wasn't very well received.
It's just people just love shit now. It's metal in particular. Anytime
that's
a metal
it. If you swerve outside your genre, that's it. It's like, they're not doing thrash anymore. They're not doing fucking doom anymore. It's always if you step outside.
But then
your box,
you continue doing it. Then it's like, I can't believe it. Like when we're talking about Slayer, that was the thing. What Slayer tried. And they were still Slayer. They fucking were still Slayer down to the last. But they did 1 or 2 albums that were slightly different. It was like, you fucking trying to cash in their sellouts.
And then you go back to doing what you're doing. Yeah, as I said, you can't do right for doing wrong. If you stay the same, you get complaints.
Yeah, and then it was like, I can't believe. A lot of people that I know that at the time would have been fairly fucking down on Slayer, and then later on they were like, oh, Slayer are great, but it would have been like, oh, fucking a bunch of 50-year-old men singing about the same shit that they were singing about when they're in their 20s. It's sad and it's this and that. Then the same 5 years later, it's like, oh, it's great, Slayer never changed, they never compromised. And it's like what do you want?
It's just as well, a lot of artists say you just have to make music for yourself and not your fans, because you're never going to please all the fans
and
all
that's
the time.
I think what Danzig has always done. I mean, quality issues aside on some things, you can't fault the guy for doing what he wants to do.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like, if you take a sidestep into his film career, wow.
Yeah, like, Jesus, yeah. For people that don't know, he, after doing 2 movies, I really want to see Debt Rider, which is a spaghetti western vampire movie, where I remember seeing interviews with him before, and he's like, yeah, well, there's none of this stuff where you have to wait around to see who the vampire is, because they're all fucking vampires. Yeah. And I don't know, it could be good. Now, I don't know, it's like, I think it was about 2 years ago. Maybe COVID had something to do with delaying its distribution or something like that. But I wish they'd just fucking stick it on DVD, because it looks like it could be quite good. But the first film that he did was based on his comics, because he's done comics as well. He's a big comic fan. And it was at a time as well, he used to speak out about it, where it was like, it was cool to see, say, from my perspective as a child, a grown man going, yeah, I like comics and being unashamed about it. And it's like, yeah, fuck you kind of a thing.
Yeah. See, I'm cool too.
Yeah, and doing his own comic line as well. He had Simon Bisley do a lot of stuff with it, who I'm a massive fan of, from 2000 AD, where I would have known Simon Bisley from doing The Horned God and stuff. But the first film based on those, Verotica.
Yes.
It's like, I mean, it's a terrible movie. There's no getting around it. It's probably up there with The Room on levels of badness, but you can't fault the creativity in it. It's just fucking mental.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like plot lines all over there, like 3 or 4 different plot lines, and it's just...
Well, the first one, it starts off with a woman with eyes in her tits.
Yeah.
And it's a tear falls from it, and I can't remember if it falls on a spider or if when it falls it creates a spider that turns into this man that goes around anally raping and choking women to death.
It sounds like an absolute fucking cheese-fueled nightmare, doesn't it really, that someone's after committing to film when you actually say it out loud like that. It's like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah, if it was directed by someone, and like, I mean, in fairness to him, it's his first movie directed, so, you know, it's not going to be, but there's just some massive fucking kind of like pacing issues with some of the things, where there was the last one something like Battery, I think, maybe Elizabeth Battery, something kind of like, but there was like 5 minutes of her just like in a blood bath going, ooh, pouring blood on herself, and you're just like,
this is how I stay.
You're just like, what the hell is going on?
But yeah, I suppose you're right. If it was like some sort of, I know, Cronenberg or someone directed it, like, oh wow, body horror, look, tits or eyes, or eyes or tits.
New to directing, you know, so that's why I'm quite interested to see the Debt Rider thing, because I don't like, people progress.
Well, that's, I know, if you told me to direct a film, I'd make some fistful of shit.
And as well, like, he backed it himself, like, to do, or well, like, you know, didn't, but like, I mean, he got the money coming. It's not like it was a big studio turned around and said, oh, we're making this and making that. And it's the same with him with the comics and stuff. Like, that was all. I think he's carried that punk ethos the whole way through his career. From the Misfits. Which people should be applaud, you know, instead of people shit on things like that, where the people are too quick, where it's like, you've not done nothing. It's easy just to criticise if you've done.
Well, that's it, yeah. Or people expect that you can only come out of a big studio, and it's like, well, this guy just decided, you know, I'll do it by myself. I'll go off, and, you know, you don't have to be in the system, man.
And as well, not even say, like, I think people got the wrong idea of indie movies. From the 90s, you know, when Miramax were at its peak with some of Kevin Smith stuff and all. Like, Clerks is an indie movie.
Self-financed, independent actors.
The rest of these movies, they're, well, actually, newer ones would be, but like the ones with Miramax, they're funded by Miramax.
Yeah, they're in the studio system.
Movies.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just, but it became a kind of a catch-all thing. Same with Tarantino's movies. Tarantino's movies, they're not independent movies, they're studio movies. It's just he's given free rein.
And he has that cash, I suppose, as well, of having that indie director kind of status from previously.
So there's a lot of movies done like that in the system that were sold as independent movies, but weren't really independent movies, and kind of, you know. But like, I mean, this is Danzig stuff is truly independent.
Pushing it through himself, basically. Just forging his own little furrow there. And
so they should be supported, whether they're good or bad. That's just you know, I think at the end of the day, art is subjective with it. So there was no such thing, I think, as good or bad. but like I mean, bad is not something that should be, you know, either you like it or you don't
That's
like
it. I know, yeah. But I mean, Jesus, we're not one to hold back from shitting on other people that we don't like, though, in fairness. So you have to give people their, you know, if people are going to give out about it, they're going to give out about it.
I know, yeah. Like I mean, it is a bad movie. Like there are.
You can't say, oh, you should have, like, okay, applaud the fact he did it himself, but still be free to go, well, actually.
Yeah, like I mean, the thing is, you can sometimes just go, but like me, you don't shit on someone with it. It's, you know, like there was the whole thing with what's his face that was doing Plan 9 from Ed Wood.
Yeah.
For years, Ed Wood was seen as the worst director, and he's terrible and all this. And then you develop a big fan base, and then when people kind of like, oh, Tim Burton likes him, and this person likes him, and that person likes him, they're influenced
now he's cool. Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah. So people are always a bit slow to give credit where it's due, and I think
I quite like shonky films as well. You know, like the likes of an Evil Dead or something like that, where it's like, right, we're going to make it ourselves. There's going to be a few gaffes in it. There's going to be a few wobbly sets. There's going to be a few like really dubious sort of special effects, but fuck it, we'll go with it. We have an idea, we want to make it.
Suspension of disbelief, isn't it? Like what was I still can't, it was like Dead something. It's about a YouTuber that goes into a haunted house. We saw it a while ago. We're talking about it on a couple of other podcasts as well. We keep bringing it up and can't remember the name, but that was made on very, very minimal budget. The special effects in it are not great, I suppose, putting it mildly, but
you see what they're going for, and I suppose, like, I mean, if you went to like a play in the theatre, like, I mean, people aren't going to have the special effects there. It's going to be like a red tissue that someone throws out for their throat when they get their throat slashed, and people just go, oh yeah, to buy into it.
But that's it. People expect everything to be like a Marvel. But like me, look at the Marvelous special effects. They're kind of shit anyway, you know.
Oh no, I hate that whole. It's like it's overproduced and it's too close up, and it's like, wow, whiz bang flash, and you're just like, there's no story though.
But that's it. Like with that film that we're talking about, there's a real charm to it, and that kind of homemade thing, and you can appreciate where it's like they're really, really trying their hardest, and it mightn't look like, oh my god, you're not going to go, oh wow, there's a demon, but it's just like they're having fun. This is a great movie. This is actually really, really, really good. It's well acted, the story was good, and there's some creative bits
it might be mad as a box of frogs, but good on him.
But like you compare to, like we were looking at the new Exorcist movie, Exorcist Believer, there a while ago. It's fucking terrible. Like I mean, I know we were just saying there's no such thing as good movie, but it's just like I thought that because we were talking before, a lot of people were shitting on the Nun 2 this year and the Pope's Exorcist. Say when we're talking about possession movies, and I quite like the two of those. They're a bit low budget and they're a bit not low budget really, like the Nun 2, the massive budget, but
they're not blockbusters, basically.
There's nothing mad goes on them, but like I really expected something big from a new Exorcist movie, and that was way worse than the two of those combined. Easily worse. Like even the special effects in it were kind of terrible. Like there was no.
I know there was no shock and there was no horror. There was no you were just like, oh yeah, okay, let's go beat by beat kind of a thing. Yeah, it was all right, like, but. It wouldn't be something like, oh my god, again, you have to go and see this, like the first Exorcist.
You wouldn't have nightmares from it.
No, maybe I do.
But
that's why I'm peddling in my sleep. Trying to run away.
But Danzig.
Yes.
Yeah. Trying to get it back on.
Yeah, sorry. Well, tell me, you're reading the comic, of course, the Adventures of Glen and Henry. Have I got the name of that right?
Yeah, Henry and Glen, or Glen and Henry. And look, my memory has gone to fucking shit lately. I can't remember the name of the guy that wrote it, but it's a collective of people wrote this comic book years ago. I'm not exactly sure what format it appeared in first.
Or how it came about.
Yeah, I think there was 4 issues, and I think you had, say, the main story, which was done in a kind of an old school cartoony kind of way, where it's like Danzig and Henry Rollins are living with each other.
They're just like roommates.
They're a couple. Okay. Their neighbours are hauling oats who are Satanists, and they're always kind of killing things, and it's the adventures. I don't want to ruin the story because the story is quite good, but there's an awful lot. It's like a metal fan, like, you know, it was quite obviously written by a metal fan. To me, it's a love letter from whoever made it to like all those people.
Sure, you showed me a couple of sort of, I don't know, frames and stuff like that, and it's just like a who's who of, like, you know, rock and metal and
like
all
Lemmy
the rest over the years.
You know, the Rob Halford, all these different people show up at it. But it's apparently it's not well. It wasn't well received by Danzig or
I was about to say, what did Danzig think
Henry
of it?
Rollins. Which he's meant to not have like the best
sense of humour.
Yeah, well, no, I think he's meant to have kind of a bit of a short temper. And stuff, and maybe he kind of felt like that was.
Yeah, well, I mean, if somebody brought out a book about you in the morning and it's like the adventures of you and some other random dude that you don't even know and you're a couple and you'd be kind of a bit weirded out, I think.
Yeah, I suppose, when you put it that way, when you can kind of think of it as probably like slash fiction, but when you read it, it's not like that. It is really...
them going on adventures.
No, they're very much and it's because it started off as a joke there. This group of artists were having, and they started doing these little sketches about like, imagine if the two of them were gay and they're in a relationship, and it's just because the two of them were so macho at the time as well, and it's just I don't want to say anything because it'll ruin it for people. There's a lot of kind of surprises and it is very, very funny. I found myself laughing a lot through it.
And it's a thick tome as well. It's not like a sort of a one shot and done. It's like
it's about 300 pages of stuff. But it's just even the artistry in it. Like there's probably in the second issue of it starts off where it's like Danzig recounting a tale, but it's kind of drawn like a Kirby. A comic. And there's a lot of bits and pieces like that, and there's some in the covers they're like Mike Mignola things where and there's like a little sketch in it where it's like that as well, where it's like the two of them kind of like Henry and Glen, they fall through the basement down into hell. So it's but it's drawn like Hellboy. There's a lot of bits and it's for comic fans and metal fans.
Just sink their teeth into.
Yeah, and it's quite sweet as well. Because it is the whole thing where it's like the two of them are in a very loving relationship. There's one bit where Danzig goes missing. And he's like, Henry's ringing around looking for him and he's asking different people kind of and they're all in strip clubs the whole time. They're like, oh, he's not here. And he was like, oh, he won't be there. So he rings out the comic book shop because he's like, oh, yeah, he'll be there. Like, he's not going to be, so it's just... that kind of thing. There's a lot of in-jokes, where you kind of see things and it's like mentions from past interviews or with him. Like there was the whole thing with the books. There was his famous clip from years and years ago that Danzig did a VHS where he was in his house and he's going through his bookshelf. And like Danzig was always... Actually, I don't think he ever said that he was a Satanist, but people always just took that he was a Satanist, and he's going through his bookshelf and there's a bit where he's reading the book about, like, I think it was the deleted chapters from the Bible, and one of it's about Jesus killing a child and he's giggling away about it. But people are always taking the piss out of that. It's like, oh, Danzig with these fucking
with these books.
With these
I thought it was hilarious though. It was like he clearly is all gleeful, like showing him off and all the rest,
But this is one of the things, if you look at a lot of the interviews with Danzig, there's maybe one or two where he's
a cranky bastard.
Yeah, and like, I mean, that happened. It's fucking going to happen.
I know, if people keep on asking you and shit, you're going to eventually get sick of it.
But most interviews that you see with him, he's actually very affable. He's laughing and joking with the interviewers. He's very honest and he's very It's the same with Rollins. Like, I mean, Rollins got this bad stick for a long time because of one or two interviews where he was just...
Or he's grouchy bollocks, basically.
Like, there was one member, like, he was literally just after walking off stage and someone came up and he was like, look, I don't mean to be rude, I need to fucking kind of like unwind, get out of this space.
Stop.
Could you please
sweating.
just fuck off?
Thing,
and then people, oh my god, Henry Rollins is a dickhead. You know?
And it's like, well, no, he's just literally after probably running about fucking 15 miles, like, having done a 2-hour show or whatever, across up and down the stage.
Yeah, there's a guy that we know who met Henry Rollins before. He went to one of his spoken word shows. And he met him briefly afterwards because apparently he does like meet and greets. He doesn't charge for it like a lot of bands do, a lot of people do. He just meets up with people and he has a conversation with them. Your man afterwards, because the guy we know, he was into writing, and Rollins said to him, oh yeah, just email me stuff and I'll talk to you about things. He emailed him and he got back to him straight away and they were emailing each other over and back for a while. Now that's...
You don't get many so-called stars that would, interact with people like that, would you?
You're not going to get your James Hetfield.
You're not going to get me even doing it. If somebody said, "Oh, would you read this?" I'd be like, "No."
But you know what I mean? That's the kind of guy that Henry Rollins is. You know, he does seem to be a genuinely nice guy.
Interested in
and I think Danzig is probably like that as well. One of the things that where people were taking the piss out of him a few years was because there was a picture of him shopping where he was after buying kitty litter.
Yeah.
And it's like, fucking what?
And the guy has a cat. Yeah. What's he supposed to do? Like, just have it fucking teleported from, like, the store or something?
But this is people that are going, oh, look at the evil Danzig.
Yeah,
and it's like, when did he ever say he was evil?
I know.
Oh, wait, no, he did. There was a song, because I'm evil.
But still, you can be evil and have cats. You know? You just need to get your kitty litter.
Most evil people would have cats.
Yes, that's true.
This is what he, like, it was blues music. I was just looking at an interview with him as well earlier on today, and he was talking about that a lot of his influences when he was growing up was blues music.
Because that's what would have been big when he would have been a young kid, like.
And it wasn't like when you look back at, like, say, the first Danzig album and the first couple of those, there was no one doing that blues thing. It was nearly people wanted to kind of get away from blues and rock and roll and metal. They were nearly ashamed of it. Like there was this whole thing where people didn't want to go back to Led Zeppelin.
It was like, oh, it's corny or it's sort of, outdated or something like that. Yeah.
And he kind of came along and did fucking heavy blues.
Yeah.
Which, like, Black Sabbath, he kind of brought back a lot of the 70s stuff, but heavier. You know, it was very, very modern, which a lot of bands would have struggled immensely with. But it's, I think it is only with Heinz. Like, it does amaze me that he's not put into a higher kind of, like, category when people are talking about influential bands or kind of like different bands. Like, do you listen back to fucking like the first album, second, all those 4 albums?
Yeah, there's an incredible run of albums.
It's just like, what the fuck? Like, I mean, it is, and I think that's probably why as well. It's easy for people to kind of shit on him, or when like the 5th album came out and the 6th album, because once you're up at such a peak,
very easy to be torn down, isn't it?
Yeah. With it, and it's just, I don't know. I could just never really understand it. How it kind of went for, and then when you listen to a lot of the albums then after, like, say, Black Acid Devil, like the 6th one, I think it's Blood Red Sabbath. No, the 6th one is Devil's Son or something like that. That's really, really, really fucking heavy. I Luciferi, the 7th one, is really, really heavy as well. That Blood Red Sabbath, it sounds an awful lot like the first 2 albums. It's just as good, really. You know, so it's, I don't think the quality of his stuff ever really went down.
It's just, it's the same as everything, though. I think people's interest in things waxes and wanes, and it was just, unfortunately, he was sort of falling out of favour at that stage. And then it became cool to, like, oh, fucking, oh, shit, or, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. But it's the same, as you said, for every other band as well, really. Where it's like, they're riding the crest of the wave, and then all of a sudden people are like, no, boo, that shit, like. And it doesn't matter even if it's really good. You mentioned James Hetfield, everyone loved the first 4 albums of Metallica, and then their biggest album, the Black Album, and people are like, boo, that's rubbish. And it's like, what? You can't please everyone all the time, you know?
Well, Load and Reload, I think, are, like, say, the equivalent of Danzig doing the industrial thing. And it's like, when you listen to that album, there's a couple of industrial songs on it, but there's still a few. I don't know. It just baffles me. I suppose people hear what they want to hear.
Yeah, and I suppose looking back on it, sort of with the sort of the perspective of time and some distance and a couple of good few years, I suppose, since you can, like, I mean, it's the same with a lot of new metal in general and a lot of industrial in general. At the time, it was shit on from a height. And now listening back, you're kind of, actually, there was some good ideas there. Actually, that was kind of innovative and all the rest. But it's the distance of time, I think, being able to look back and kind of go,
well, it's appreciate the thing as well. I think when we were talking about Slayer, we were talking, or maybe on the Trash, we were going on about how a lot of the Trash bands never really return the favour, bringing smaller bands out on tour with them. Particularly, like, say, death metal bands or black metal bands, they kind of avoided the genre at all. And a large part of that, I think, is because, there was a lot of bands that didn't want to say, no one wanted Slayer opening for them. Fucking
I know, their fans are either going to get bet up on, sort of waiting for them, or they're going to be destroyed during Slayer,
but it's, like, as a band, you can't follow Slayer. Like, you just can't. I was looking at Danzig talking, and he was just being asked, like, with the people that you bring out on tour, do you bring them out because you, and he was like, yeah. And he was like, basically, when we started off, he said no one would bring us on tour because there was this whole thing where they'd be like, oh, fuck, we can't have them opening up for us. They're better than us. And he's like, I've never looked at it as a competitive thing. He was like, you're in it together with other musicians. You're there to share the experience and to try and bring people along. So the interview that I saw from that was like he had Korn and Marilyn Manson opening up for him, and this was before they were big, and he was like, they're amazing bands, I really like them, we should be doing, this and that. So you have to give him fucking credit for that. Absolutely, as well, that he pulled along a lot of kind of bands that made it very, very big.
Yeah, they kind of catapulted over him nearly.
Yeah, so someone, someone like that I wouldn't necessarily think is the angry asshole that he's made out of.
Yeah, that's true.
There was that video in, maybe 2010, 12 or something like that. I remember those Northside Kings or something like that.
God,
that fucking hardcore. But whereas this viral video went around of Danzig having an argument with this guy backstage from another band, and Danzig pushed him and your man sucker punched him really. And then just ran off. And it was this whole thing where it was like they were trying to make out that Danzig was...
Oh yeah, look how untough he is, kind of a thing. It's like, fucking hell, Danzig is a shorter man. This guy was fucking built like an absolute tank.
Your man kind of sucker punched. Danzig pushed him alright, and your man just fucking clattered him.
That's it, out of the blue. Like, if anybody gets a sucker puncher going down like a fucking ton of bricks.
But as well, it's quite obvious. To my mind, it was set up. Like, why were they fucking filming at the first place with camcorders? And apparently it was going on for days beforehand. There was this thing where they were just needling them, that they were quite obviously looking for. Your man wrote a book about it as well afterwards.
I know, talk about fucking living in the shadow of someone else's fame. Like, just riding coattails. Oh, I'm the man that fucking had an altercation with Danzig. Oh, well done. You're not Danzig though, are you?
Yeah. But there's always these stories about kind of like Danzig being a bit difficult or a bit of a diva and all this, and I think there's probably a couple of incidents that no doubt there is. You can't get to that, and especially if you've been going for that long, you're going to want things done a certain way. You're going to know how things should be done.
You're going to get pissed off if you arrive there, and things aren't set up how you need them to be. And, the fans aren't going to get the best experience either,
But, Christ almighty, like, how many thousands of gigs has that man played? I'm sure if someone like that turns around and says to you, maybe you should do things this way and that way, you go, all right.
Listen, exactly, there's a reason he's asking.
I know that we sound like we're fucking sycophants or something here. I don't know, who can say that?
But it kind of sounds like you're defending him, and he doesn't need defending.
No, he doesn't know. But at the time, there was a lot over. It's like, Danzig deserved it. I was like, how the fuck did he deserve that? Yeah. You don't even know what happened. You've seen a 2-second fucking clip.
Yeah, and they made sure to cut to just before, like, Danzig pushed your man. So, like, what happened before that? That sounds very victim blaming. I don't mean, like, what was she doing running around to get a slap off?
I know, but there was it was going on for days, apparently, this kind of fucking shit where they were goading them and goading them and goading them and goading them. And he has a notoriously short temper.
Anyway, you can probably relate to that, I would imagine, quite well.
But, what do you find? They knew what they were doing. Like, and as well, kind of like for all the years that the guy was playing with other bands and stuff, you don't hear other bands saying a bad word about the man.
Well, sure, didn't a load of other metal singers, I suppose, they all came on and contributed like backing vocals to some of his albums as well,
he's
Pepper
always
Keenan
had stuff,
and James Hetfield, all of that.
Sure, Hetfield. I think the thing with Danzig, that from what I can get from other kind of musicians and stuff talking about him, is that it's not that he's difficult, it's just that he's set in these fucking ways with stuff. Do you remember there was a thing where when they were going to cover, I can't remember which song they were going to cover, was it, what fucking song did they cover, the Misfits? I Got Something to Say.
Oh yeah.
Or no, Last Caress.
Yeah. Green Hell. Yeah.
And Green Hell, and they just said, could you send us on the lyrics? And they kept sending on different lyrics to him, and Hetfield was like, what the fuck? I always thought it was this. And then it was like, why is it? And it sounds to me like he was fucking with him.
Yeah, having a bit of a laugh.
Yeah. But as well, other people, the way that they talk, like about with the films and stuff, is that I think he has his way of doing things or his way of doing stuff, and he don't back down. Although thinking with that House of the Vampire, they were saying he was very collaborative on it and stuff, but apparently it's just there because he's not like a director. He doesn't really. I suppose he knows how to direct from. He's
music
forward with.
videos and stuff. Yeah.
So people were like, oh yeah, it's a bit of a unique experience. Being directed by him.
Yeah.
But like, I mean,
yeah, enjoy it. If it's a unique experience, then. But yeah, like, I mean, that was the thing as well. Recently enough, wasn't there again? He, sort of went a bit viral on the internet because a girlfriend shared photos of him, like sitting down with his cat wrapping the Christmas presents.
Oh
or
yeah,
something
apparently
like that.
he wasn't happy about that.
I know, yeah. Well, it's a private moment, and then everyone sort of ran with it because it's a great meme template, and everyone's
that's the thing. He probably knew what was going to fucking happen because there's always seems to be kind of like invasion of a man's privacy when he sold his house
with the bricks.
Oh yeah, Danzig's bricks, the evil bricks. They're a big part in the comic.
Oh, are they as well? Yeah.
But
for anyone who doesn't know the backstory, would you care to illuminate people?
I can't remember. It was like there was a load of bricks that he had left out in front of that. He was
from doing a renovation. Yeah, a neighbour was basically constantly, "Oh, move your fucking bricks! I move my bricks when I want."
Yeah, that was it. Wasn't there a thing where it was him out fucking throwing the bricks in, going, "Now you fucking happy?"
Yeah, moving my fucking bricks. Yeah, but that's that's just. I think that makes him far more likeable because that's very relatable. If you have a fucking picky neighbour that's over going, "Hey, you haven't mowed your lawn," or fucking move the pile of bricks, you'd be like, here's our pile of bricks through your front window.
That's the thing. I tell you, if anyone's lived beside you, someone that's fucking coming over to your house and saying,
telling you what to do.
This and doing that, like, you bury a fucking brick in their head, let alone move it. Well, yeah, but there just seems to be a thing where
that was a whole sort of internet lore thing at the time as well, when the internet was hitting real big and there was all these stories floating around.
It was Twitter.
It was a huge long story.
It was kind of around the time that Twitter started off because I can remember following. There was a guy called Not the Real Glen Danzig.
Oh yeah.
And he used to be like putting up pretending that he was Danzig.
Yeah.
And it was just. And then that started coming up, and it was just like,
what?
This guy, and so it turned into a bit of a thing with it. But yeah, and then there was the pictures from inside his house after he sold it. So the whole thing was like it was like a bit of a shithole inside. But that's after he fucking sold it. That's not like the way
he moved out. Yeah, he had all his furniture and shit gone. Like any house looks like shit.
And there was stuff left over, and there probably stuff that he didn't want. And people were like, "Oh my god, the state."
He's living in squalor. And it's like, no, it's just an empty house. I'm sure he had furniture when he was living there. Like.
But I think a lot of that it really detracts from his music. And let's not forget, like, he wrote fucking, and as well, he would have contributed, I think, those albums to Def Jam. Right? Like Rick Rubin produced those albums with him, and they're fucking, although by all accounts apparently Danzig pretty much did the third and the fourth one on his own.
Yeah, I think he had a very particular vision, which is he's right, and he wanted to do things the way he wanted.
But as well, Rick Rubin is fairly well known for like standing back and not really producing. He says it himself, I don't have any technical abilities, I'm not like a producer. His whole thing is about inspiring people and getting the best out of them. Getting them creative. And like, I mean, he hooked him up with Johnny Cash as well, and Danzig wrote, there was a 13 for him. I think it's at the start of The Hangover for people who either The Hangover 1 or 2. That song with Danzig, that's Danzig, and he did, like I've said before, for fucking Roy Orbison. And so, like, I mean, for Johnny Cash to turn around
and sort of give you the thumbs up kind of thing, I suppose, really, that's a high accolade, really, isn't it?
Well, I think it was the versatility of his songwriting skills as well.
But I suppose he could kind of metal Johnny Cash as well, really, I suppose, because he did have that kind of that not mournful, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but that sort of real sort of pain, sorrowful kind of he could do that really well, where it's like, this is terrible.
There's an honesty, I think, in his voice. There's a soul in his voice. It's just like when you listen to Misfits and Sam Hain and then into Danzig, like the transition with his voice, it is amazing. Like he quite obviously doesn't, like, it's not like someone taught him how to sing or anything like that, but he
obviously just honed his talents.
And like there is some songs when I listen to, like I was saying, that were just hear Jim Morrison.
Yeah.
Or hear the Doors.
He has a huge vocal range as well. You know, everyone does think of him as this like deep baritone and stuff, but Jesus, he has some yowls and howls and screams and stuff where he's reaching very high registers and just a wide fucking range.
Like, one of my favourite songs was the ballad Sustaina.
Yeah.
That's a Roy Orbison
That's
song.
very beautiful as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a slow kind of a piece that, you know, it's very moving, I suppose, if you want to sort of, you know, if you let music affect you, it would be very affecting.
But what I'd hate to see happen is that after he dies, all of a sudden,
people are all like, oh yeah, he was great.
Yeah.
We've lost the legend.
Going back, where it's like, I think we should be celebrating people.
Exactly, appreciate them in their lifetime. Yeah, that's it.
That was actually one of the other interviews that I saw them, which I thought was your woman said, "Oh, do you mind talking about the Misfits?" And he was like, "Not really. I don't really." He was just like, "I just don't like talking to some people." What did he say? Because the Rolling Stones and all that. He said magazine are after getting big into kind of covering all these things now. And he was saying this was fucking 20 odd years ago.
Yeah,
30 odd years ago. He was like, why wouldn't they wouldn't cover it when we were doing it? They thought that it was stupid and that it wasn't important. We all knew that it was important, and now fucking 30 years later they're talking about how
singing the praises. Exactly,
where he's like, you know, we could have done with that like years ago.
How the turntables.
Yeah. Which he was right, where it's like, you know, the Rolling Stones and all those magazines, they're meant to be magazines about music and covering music and new scenes, and they don't really. It's always fucking, they pick up on things well after the fact. And there's a lot of big bands, or bands that went on being big, like Ghost. No one picked up on Ghost for fucking like 3 albums.
Yeah.
But then everyone jumped on it saying, oh God, oh yeah, it was
fantastic.
Like, yeah. Now, well, I'd include us in that as well.
Yes, I know, because there's Meliora that did for us, but then
we weren't kind of like, oh, back in the day, oh yeah, we were listening to him back in the day. Like, I mean, years earlier, if I had seen Ghost years earlier, even when I heard the first,
you were not impressed.
Fuck?
Yeah, it was just because I insisted on listening to it.
Like I told the story before, it was someone recommended me, but they got him confused with Behemoth.
Easy thing to do.
Yeah, I fucking put on Ghost, and I was like, this is not fucking Polish black metal. What the fuck? And then I kept putting them on. There was 1 or 2 songs that stood out, and then they really grew on me.
Yeah.
But like they really fucking grew on you.
Oh, I'm a massive fan. Yeah. Still a massive fan, even though I'm not, I'm not overly enamoured with what they're doing lately, but like the first couple of albums fucking brilliant.
And like we saw when they were playing
a good few times actually,
tiny like fucking venues from tiny venues. It was a student union fucking venue
up to the Royal
Albert Hall,
and actually Twickenham, which is a big stadium.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Metallica. But yeah, like I mean Ghost but like I mean Ghost were probably, but then same stuff happened with Danzig when Danzig was kind of starting to do big. People were singing these, and then
there was the turn when he got big.
Yeah, there was a turn, and it was all these like fucking Kerrang and all that at the time that really, I think.
And they're the ones that should be sorted, but that seems to be the whole tabloidy thing anyway. And I'd include rock and metal magazines in that. They just go with whatever is the flavour of the month, and it becomes cool to hate on someone. Becomes cool to like. I mean, you know, the standard meme is like, oh, but what does Corey Taylor think about such and such a thing? You know, because they were sort of so busy doting on Corey Taylor and Slipknot for a while. There, it's like, Jesus Christ, can you ever write an article that doesn't reference them?
But places that they forget as well. I think people's past work too. You know, where it's. Like say with Metallica with Load and Reload, it was like, oh, Metallica are dead, they're not. Yeah. They're not kind of, and then with fucking Saint Anger, it was like, oh, they're just not with it anymore. It's time for them off the thing. And it's like, all right, even if you don't like those albums, what about the albums that you do like, the important ones, or ones that are important? One
album that you don't like doesn't cancel out. You know, you don't have to stop liking all the other albums, like just because you don't like one. And I mean, to me, they're those particular albums I think are great anyway. And they're back on form, so like just give people a chance to have their steps and their adventures and their Like, I mean, as I mentioned with Ghost, I'm not a fan of the latest album, but I'm still a fan of Ghost, and I will still hang around it.
Like,
exactly, I listen to all the old albums, and I'll still, whenever the new one comes out, I'll be eagerly anticipating and see what direction they're taking then.
But that's the thing, if you're into an artist, you kind of, unless they're, like, I mean, I will say, with, say, something like Marilyn Manson, like, I've always been a fan of Marilyn Manson, and then when all the stuff started coming out, I was like,
no. Yeah, I know, yeah.
And it's like, I mean, I think it's our generation, we've talked about this before amongst ourselves, our generation was kind of good at separating the artist from
the art.
But like with something like what Marilyn Manson's been accused of, whether I mean, he's not up being charged with anything, but there's just something,
I know,
to
you're
my
kind of
mind,
going, oh, that's disappointing, and
tainted, and I kind of go,
love, eh?
but you know, you kind of go, oh, I don't know, it's because the image of him is so different from what I thought he was, which, like, I mean, just,
you're not mad, you're just disappointed.
Yeah. But I can't listen to stuff. It's just kind of like, no, I wouldn't.
It has been properly tainted now, hasn't it?
Yeah, but at the same point, I think I can listen to fucking Burzum and shit.
That's it, I know, yeah.
You know, so that goes to, you know, how disappointed I am with
you can tolerate murder, but not anything that's kind of to do with, like, sexual assault or abuse.
Yeah, but it's, well, how did we get to that? We're talking about Marilyn Manson. Oh, it's separating the
art from the artist.
Yeah.
And letting artists just fully explore what they want to do. If you like an artist, even if they're running down a fucking path that you're not particularly a fan of yourself, you should be like, yeah, you go, guy. That's great.
Yeah, well,
and I'll pick back up, and you know, I'll go a different way, and I'll pick it back up at the next fork in the woods.
Trent Reznor's done an awful lot of stuff over the years that have been kind of like, meh.
Yeah.
You know, that I just wouldn't be a fan of. I might kind of go back to it over the years and kind of try and re-listen to it, and then you might find something different when you're after changing as a person, or after having a bit more experience kind of behind
or
it.
something just hits differently, you know, something that doesn't resonate with you at a certain age, come back 10 years later and all of a sudden you're going, oh, I get it now, I get where he's coming
but
from.
at the same point, it's not like, because like there has been some albums that he's put out where I've been going, oh god.
And then he does the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles soundtrack, and that's great.
Yeah, but you know, I would never be like, oh god, I hate fucking Trent Reznor.
How dare he?
How dare he make this music that I've gotten so much enjoyment out of over the years, and that's changed my life in so many positive ways.
Why isn't he here specifically catering to my wants and needs instead of his own, like, you know, creative path that he wants to follow? But that's, I think.
Well, I suppose that's probably one thing with Danzig. It's people that are fans of Danzig are true fans of Danzig, and I think they're probably true fans of music as well, and appreciate music as well. They're not fucking Fairweather fan. You can't be a Fairweather fan, really, can you? Especially at this stage.
Yeah.
Like, how many people
been ups and downs and ups and downs now,
But as well, it's like a lot of the Misfits revival, and people that I don't think the same people really jumped on Danzig.
No, I mean, see, that's the thing. I think the Misfits, and it seems to be cool as well. Just the Misfits, and it's always like it's the T-shirt, like, you know, with the fucking the ghoul, the ghost, or whatever the fuck you call the icon or whatever, and that's what everyone sort of flashes onto.
That was taken from I can't remember the film. It was like a 1930s film or a 1920s
Mask or something.
Something like that.
But yeah, do you know what I mean? Everyone latches onto the imagery and all that, and it's like, well, Danzig had cool imagery. I'm wearing a cool T-shirt. Got Danzig.
Very cool imagery.
It's just just this very minute actually. I'm wearing my Danzig T-shirt.
I'm not going to wind it up now in a minute, but like one thing I will say about him is, like, say, even from the comic book perspective, he's been very collaborative and very open to working with art. You know, giving artists, and the same with the album covers. I think there was a reissue of Black Acid Devil, and I don't know who did it, but it looks to me like it might have been Simon Bisley did the cover, but the cover is fucking cool as shit. I think if you're listening to it on streaming,
cool as shit, that's
probably the cover that you see, where it's a black and white cover as opposed to the red one when it came out. Where it's kind of like the skull, the logo for Danzig, kind of separated and kind of like mechanical stuff coming out of it as well. Very cool.
Very cool. Yes, very cool in general, as Mr. Danzig.
Yeah, but basically this whole podcast has been an unapologetic.
We like Danzig.
Yeah, and you should be listening to. If you're not listening to Danzig, you should be going back.
Yeah,
it's not try him out. You get into him. You carve Danzig into your forehead. But it's just he's so underrated. Stuff is so underrated. I think it should be. It'd be great.
It should be rated.
Yeah.
It should be overrated.
It should be. He's right up there with Elvis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the thing. If he'd have been around 10 years earlier, you would have had like fucking teeny boppers fawning all over him. Maybe.
Well, he kind of did at the time when he was around. And although maybe there's a lot of teenage boys.
Thinking he was cool.
With it, but it's like Matt was saying, just go and listen to Danzig.
Yes.
We're going to do more episodes like this about people that we think are underrated, people who don't listen.
People we think are cool.
Yeah. And if you don't like it,
oh well.
I'm really sorry. Don't give us a bad review. But yeah, until next time, Danzig.